Andrew Newland with Newtography, or my boob. And yesterday I had a friend of mine who asked me to set her up with a new DSLR and lens before she goes to Disney World next week. So I thought I'd make a couple videos for any and all of you out there in YouTube land who may be wondering the same thing about what DSLR you should buy and why. So we ended up getting her a Nikon D5000 with a Tamron 18 to 270 millimeter lens. She had been a Canon shooter for over a decade prior to that, but she had never gotten too technical with it. So switching from Canon to Nikon wasn't going to be that big of a deal for her. And it was a very big upgrade from her old Canon Rebel. Myself being a Nikon shooter, I obviously was recommending a Nikon to her because she asked my opinion and Nikon was my personal preference. I also recommended the 18 to 270 millimeter lens to her because on her Canon she had the kit lens, which was an 18 to 55, and then she had a 70 to 300 millimeter lens. So instead of having those two lenses from 18 to 300, setting her up with that 18 to 270 was really going to help her out and just have a go-to just shoot all camera lens that she just wouldn't have to worry about fumbling around with lenses. And this was well within her budget of about $900. We found the D5000 on Craigslist in amazingly great condition used for $300. It was almost brand new. It had 80% of its shutter life left on it, and it was just in phenomenal condition. And for $300, I mean, we couldn't pass that up. And she bought the Tamron lens on Amazon brand new, and she saved some money there. And in total, I think she spent around $750 to switch and upgrade to a different system, and she'll be able to sell some of her old stuff. So it was just a really good upgrade and a steal for her price-wise. So now the big question is, which DSLR should you buy and why? What I will say is that the DSLR or camera body is not really what's most important. What's most important is your lenses and your lens selection based on what kind of photography you do. So we're gonna split this up into two videos. This first one, we'll go over the DSLRs that are out on the market today and which one you should buy. And in the next video about lenses, we're just gonna go over what lens would work best with you depending on your style of photography and what you're gonna be taking pictures of. So for DSLR camera bodies, I shoot Nikon, so obviously this video is gonna be a little bit biased towards Nikon. But to be completely honest, you cannot go wrong nowadays with all the cameras that are out on the market. There is so much packed into these little cheap camera bodies that you will never need to use or know how to use. So your choices really aren't right or wrong. It's just whatever fits you better, you know, whatever feels good in your hand. And like I said, it's more about the lenses. Some manufacturers have more of a lens selections than others. So yeah, you really can't go wrong with your DSLR selection. But one choice may be better than another for you, so we're going to go over all the ones that are out on the market today and see if we can find the camera that best fits your needs. Nowadays, all these camera manufacturers are pumping out new camera models on the shelves like faster than bread or milk in the grocery store. It's crazy, and they just have so many features at such a low price point that it's an amazing time to get into photography. So the most important thing is really just to find out your budget and then figure out what camera fits you best in that price range. There are plenty of YouTube channels out there that go really in depth with all these cameras that are out on the market today, and they just throw specs and stuff at you that you don't really need to know, and they just confuse you. So I'm just gonna try to shoot it to you straight and simple and tell you what you need to know so we can get you out there shooting. Now, for the lower end consumer line, Nikon has the D3200 and the D5200. Both of these are 24 megapixel cameras with full 1080p HD video and all that good stuff. The D3200 is priced around $550 new, and the D5200 is anywhere between $700 and $800 new, depending on where you get it, what kind of sale, and that kind of stuff. The D5200 is obviously the better camera since it's more expensive. but not by a lot. It just has a few bells and whistles that the 3200 doesn't have, and slightly better performance overall. The main selling point for the D5200 is what Nikon calls the vari-angle display. Basically, this is just a tilt and swivel display screen that helps you whenever you want to get high at a concert and see what you're shooting, or shoot down low for landscapes. The D5000 was my first camera, and I bought it specifically for the screen, and I kind of wish I still had one, because I like getting low for landscapes and taking that picture and still being able to see on the screen what I'm composing. Now, there are rumors about a D5300 coming out soon, and if that's the case, I may actually pick one of those up, just for the screen, for landscapes, and for video recording. I just really miss having that swivel screen. Both the D5200 and the D3200 have great low light performance. The D5200 goes up to 25,600 ISO. The D3200 goes up to 12,800 ISO. The D5200 has 5 frames per second burst mode. The D3200 is at 4 frames per second. They both get about 500 shots per battery charge. The D5200 has a built-in HDR mode that I've heard good things about, so if you're interested in trying to learn HDR photography, first of all, I'll have a tutorial on HDR photography. It's kind of one of my specialties. But if you're into HDR photography, or if you want to get into HDR photography, this may be a good starting point for you. These are both incredibly amazing cameras that I would not hesitate to take on a paying gig and shoot with at any time. The one downside I will say is that Nikon kind of puts a crappy lens in front of their amazing sensors. The 18-55 kit lens is just really not that great. They sell for like 50 bucks on Craigslist all the time. And I mean, I go through them, I throw them on there whenever I know I'm gonna be doing something crazy, or my camera might get a little beat up. My cameras can usually take the punishment, but I don't wanna really put an expensive lens on there, so I just put one of these crappy 18-55. So that is the one downside, is that it's a shame that they put this cheap lens in front of such a great sensor, but I suggest just getting the camera body, and that'll save you some money, and then we'll figure out what lens you need, and then you'll get the best overall bang for your buck. Now, Canon has some great camera bodies in this price range as well. Their EOS Rebel line ranges anywhere from $300 to $1,000, and they're just some great cameras in there. They are slightly inferior in image quality and megapixels, but just slightly. I mean, honestly, it is, to an amateur or a pro, nothing that you could ever really notice on first glance. It's just for those people who really get into it. I just like Nikon. You know, I want the best. They had an amazing array of lenses, and some lenses that Canon didn't have that I really wanted to get for landscape photography. These Canons also have some bells and whistles that the Nikons don't have. Their flagship EOS Rebel T5i has that swivel display, but it's touch sensitive, so you can focus by touching the screen or go through the menus, and that seems to be a really cool thing that I'd like to play around with. The Canons are usually a little bit ahead of Nikon in the HD video department. The quality isn't really much different. Like I said, the Nikon sensors are a little bit better, but they do have some quirks and bells and whistles that the Nikons don't have. These things aren't something you would really notice, so we're not going to get into them. It's just kind of knick-knack stuff that DSLR video guys are kind of all big about, but it's not really that important. The Rebel lineup ranges from 12 megapixels up to 18 megapixels. So like I said, the image quality is a little bit less, but not really so much less that you would notice. And honestly, no one really needs more than like 12 megapixels. I shoot professionally, and most of the longtime professionals that I'm shooting with are shooting with 12 megapixels or lower with amazing results. So the megapixel isn't really all that big of a deal unless you're really technical and just set on getting the most megapixels for your money. Besides Nikon and Canon, there are a few other brands. The only ones I think that are worth talking about are Sony and Pentax. The Pentax K30 is probably the best bang for the buck overall. It's just got a lot packed into a really cheap camera system. And like I said, I'm a Nikon shooter, so really the reason Nikon and Canon are so much bigger is just because they have such a greater selection of lenses to choose from. I mean, your camera body is going to change all the time, but lenses are something you invest in and last you a lifetime. Sony's really introducing some cutting edge stuff, especially in this price range. Their A77 model is like around $900, and it's a 24 megapixel camera that does blazing fast 12 frames per second burst mode, which is pretty crazy since that's as fast or faster than the top of the line $6,000-$7,000 Nikon or Cameron Pro cameras. Okay, since you're here wondering what camera you should buy, I'm just gonna guess that you're not gonna be spending a whole lot of money on a new camera. So we're not gonna get too far into the upper echelon cameras from these manufacturers. I will touch on a few of the really incredible cameras that these manufacturers offer if you're just looking to get the best camera money can buy. So one step up in the Nikon line is the D7100. I'm recording on a D7000 right now, which is the first generation of that camera line, and I absolutely love it. It's one of the most popular cameras, and I mean, for a good reason. It's an amazing camera. I got it when it first came out, and it's been my go-to camera ever since. I usually don't break out my pro gear unless it's a paying gig, so this camera really gets a lot of action as my everyday shooter. Anyways, the D7100, it also has a 24 megapixel camera, full 1080p video. It shoots up to 6 frames per second, and these run about $1,100. They get a lot more shots per charge. I'd say 1,000 to 2,000 images per battery, depending on the battery. Yeah, I rarely change my batteries unless I'm doing video, just because they last so long. I can go 3 or 4 or 5 shoots without having to change a battery. And at $1,100, it is well worth that price point. On the Canon side, we have the equivalent in the EOS 70D. This camera has 20 megapixels as well as a bunch of other goodies you'd expect to find. It has a few extra things such as built-in wireless that the Nikon doesn't have, and it has a new autofocus system which is really supposed to improve the live focus while you're recording videos. The next step up is to a full frame professional camera body. Full frame essentially just means a bigger sensor. And the bigger the sensor, the better the image quality. So the Nikon line has the D600 and the D800. If you are in that price range, I would definitely suggest the D800. It's on my dream camera list, and hopefully I'll be getting one before too long. The D800 has the world's highest quality full frame sensor with a ridiculous 36 megapixels. This thing can really create some stunning images, and this camera falls around $3,000 brand new. So Canon's 5D is their full frame competitor, and the 5D is about $3,500 new. It's a 22 megapixel full frame DSLR, and it has some really cutting edge features. Sony has their flagship A99, which is a 24 megapixel full frame camera, and it's a little less than $3,000 brand new. Now, if you want to step up and get the full-on professional cameras, be prepared to spend over $5,000 and really have no idea what you're doing or how to start learning how to use your camera. But I'll make you a deal. I will put a link to the Nikon D4 along with everything else I've talked about in the description box. And if you're gonna grab one and you wanna just go ahead and grab me one too, you know, just add another one to your cart, then I will personally come give you a week-long photography session on how to use your camera and anything and everything else you ever want to know about photography. That's a pretty good deal. It's pretty great. I'd suggest you do it. So, D4, if you're buying one, buy me one too. Anyways, I hope this video helps some of you guys out there. The moral of the story is basically you can't really go wrong nowadays picking a camera. So just pick one that fits in your budget and fits in your hand, and then come back to Newtography and I'll help you figure out what's most important, which is the lens selection. I'll be putting together a lens buying guide video tomorrow. So subscribe and stay tuned to find out what lens best suits your style of photography or whatever it is you're going to be shooting. As always, thank you for watching. You guys are great. I have like no subscribers, but that's okay. I love helping and teaching any way I can. If you have any questions or comments, seriously, comment, message me, whatever. Feel free. I love helping everybody out. Yeah, and if you're interested in learning more about Newtography, you can head over to the website, newtography.com. We're on all your social media. Just search Newtography on everything, or Andrew Newland on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+, yeah, all that great stuff. yeah, and until next time, love you, bye.